Ndiyabulisa kuni nonke, igama nguThando N, student number 186688186, and this is my submission for our virtual practical for food preparation. I started off with my welcome drinks, and these are my ingredients. The liquor of choice that I'll be using is one called Southern Comfort, the lime flavor. I went and got ice from the fridge for my shaker and then started with the measurements of my cocktail. This is one that I would like to call my own creation. I added my double shots, 2 doubles for that fact, 2 doubles of my liquor into my shaker. I then followed with some pineapple that I had in the fridge, and they had stayed long enough to release its own juices. So I decided to add the juice of a pineapple. I thought it would be enough to fill up the double, but it ended up being more of a single shot of the pineapple juice. I followed up with a double shot of apple juice into my shaker as well. I then realized that with the ingredients I had added so far that it needed some lemon to cut through all the sweetness from the apple juice and the pineapple juice. So therefore I went into the fridge and grabbed lemon juice and measured out 1 shot of that and also added it into my shaker. Once I had added all my ingredients, I proceeded to the fun part, which was actually shaking my cocktail. I shook it until it felt that it was cold enough, and then proceeded to strain that into my 2 beautiful champagne flutes. I didn't fill it up all the way because I was still leaving room for my soda water that I was going to use to top up my cocktail. I topped up my champagne flutes with soda water, and this was my welcome drink of choice that I decided to serve my guests. I took the drinks to my guests and then decided it was time to start working on my appetizers. For my appetizers, I decided to serve 2 vegan friendly dishes. For the first one, I am going to be making my bruschetta, and this was me just preparing my ingredients, which was slicing my onion, and then I also decided to hollow out my tomatoes before dicing them. I didn't want my apologies. As I was saying, I didn't want my bruschetta to be too wet, as I was still also going to add dressings and other things. So I did not need the excess water from the tomatoes. I diced my tomatoes and then emptied them into this purple bowl next to me, not forgetting to clean as I go. I then went ahead and chopped up basil as finely as I could, removing the stems as I do not like biting into that. Once I had chopped up all my vegetables that I needed, it was now time to work on my dressing. I measured out 30 milliliters of olive oil using the 15 milliliter spoon, so I just used double of that to get to my 30. I then seasoned my salad with salt and pepper, and this is what it should look like once everything is nicely incorporated. I cleaned my working space making sure everything is ready for my loaf that I will be slicing. I sliced my loaf of bread into 2-inch thick slices and then proceeded to lay them on a baking tray where I would further drizzle them with olive oil before popping them into the oven for no longer than 10 minutes. Once they were done, I brought them out and they looked beautifully golden and crispy. While they were still hot, I also went ahead and rubbed a garlic clove on each on each slice, and that is just to enhance the flavor even more. I also went ahead and put ricotta cheese on each of my slices of toasted bread. Once I was satisfied with my bread and cheese combo, I went ahead and placed my bread in this beautiful round serving dish and then went ahead and topped each slice of bread with my bruschetta and then went ahead to drizzle this balsamic glaze. This was the finished product. I finished with my first appetizer and decided to move on to my second dish, which is my spinach and feta phyllo puffs. I destemmed my baby spinach and chopped it very finely. Once I finished chopping my spinach, I also went ahead and cleaned my working station as pieces of spinach were everywhere. I then took out my kitchen scale and measured out 150 grams of mushrooms, as that is how much I needed for this dish. I went ahead and also diced my mushrooms very finely as I needed them as small as I could get them. I went ahead and chopped my onion as well, diced it before moving ahead to saute all my vegetables. In my pan, I drizzled some olive oil and then went ahead and added my onion and sauteed them until they were fragrant before I added my mushrooms. I also added my spinach once my mushrooms were soft enough. I added my spinach, sauteed them as well until they started to wilt. Once I was happy with that, I went ahead and seasoned with salt and pepper according to taste. Once my mushrooms and spinach were done cooking, I added them in a separate bowl and also added feta cheese as well as ricotta into the mix, where I would mix my cheese and spinach mix. This is what it should look like once everything is evenly incorporated. In my muffin pan, I decided to line it with some butter just so that my pastries would not burn or give me any hard time to take them out. This is my phyllo pastry that I will be using. Since it comes as just a sheet, it was too big for my muffin pans. So I went ahead and cut my phyllo pastry into the squares that I will be needing. Once cut, I put each sheet into the muffin pan and then proceeded to stuff each one with my spinach and feta mixture, and buttered my phyllo sheets and baked in the oven. This was the finished result. After finishing with my appetizers, I moved on to my main dish, which is a delicious lasagna. I minced some garlic and chopped the holy trinity, which is celery, onion, and carrots. Off screen, I went ahead and blended 2 tomatoes in order to get the puree that I would need for my lasagna sauce. In a pan, I added my olive oil and then also went ahead and added my vegetables and proceeded to saute them. While my vegetables were sauteing, I went ahead and also brought some water to a boil that I was going to need for my lasagna sheets. I went ahead and added some chili into my pan, which is optional. Added the chili according to taste and also went ahead with 5 milliliters of mixed herbs and also salt and pepper according to taste, all in my frying pan. I also went ahead and added some tomato paste for enhancing that rich taste, and went ahead and also added my tomato puree. Once my water had come to a boil, I decided to add my lasagna sheets just for 4 minutes, no longer than that. Once my lasagna sheets and my meat sauce were done, I decided to work on my bechamel sauce. I melted butter in my saucepan as well as adding flour and whisked all that. I then went ahead and added my milk, continuously whisking so that I could get the silky smooth sauce. Once I was happy with the thickness and consistency of my sauce, I went ahead and also added some cheddar cheese just to add depth into my sauce, making it more delicious and the flavors more pronounced. I also went ahead and seasoned it with a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper. Once satisfied with the consistency of my sauce, I decided to now start assembling my lasagna into my baking dish. I layered my lasagna alternating between my meat sauce, my bechamel sauce, and also my cheese. Once done, I wrapped my lasagna with foil and put it into the oven. I cooked it for 15 minutes with the foil on and then went ahead to cook it further for 5 minutes without the foil sheet covering so that the cheese on top could be nice and melted. After 20 minutes of being in the oven, this was the final result and it was absolutely gorgeous. After finishing my lasagna, I decided to start working on my dessert, which was a carrot cake. I prepped all my ingredients, measuring everything that I needed beforehand, and this is what I had. I decided to shred some carrot and add it into my flour mixture. In a separate bowl rather, I mixed together my eggs water, and oil, and then proceeded to whisk all these ingredients together, making sure that everything is nice and evenly incorporated. In the bowl that contained my dry ingredients, I made a well in the center and then added my wet ingredients. This is when the ship started going downhill as my electric hand mixer decided to malfunction, so I had to do everything manually. After mixing all my batter and making sure everything is nice and smooth, I lined my baking dish with some butter and then added my batter in there and popped it into the oven. While my cake was baking, it was time for me now to start working on my icing. This proved to be quite a taxing task, as now I had to find ways to pivot from my electric hand mixer to now finding a way to make this icing work without it. In my bowl, I put my ingredients, which is butter and cream cheese, and I decided that I was going to make use of a fork and whatever manpower that I have to make this icing come alive. Using a fork, I mixed all my ingredients to get my icing to this consistency. As it was too thick for my liking, I decided to add some milk to loosen it up. I measured 30 milliliters of milk and placed it in my bowl, and then went ahead and mixed my icing some more just to get it nice and silky and smooth as you see it now. With my desserts finished, I went ahead and started making my cocktail of the day. This was the official drink of the day that I decided to make apart from my welcome drinks. In my glasses, I measured out some gin. I put 2 slices of lemon and also 2 leaves of dried hibiscus and muddled. I'm using a wooden spoon as I do not know where my muddle disappeared to. I added some tonic water and tasted my cocktail off screen and decided that the hibiscus particles getting stuck in my mouth were not a pleasant experience. So I strained my cocktail into a different glass and then went ahead and measured out a double shot of pomegranate juice, and it was absolutely delicious. Due to the fact that I do not have a formal dining table in my house, I decided to set up my spread as a hover style table where everyone could just pick up what they wanted and serve themselves.